It's also disingenuous. It sounds like a kid saying, "This isn't my weed. I was just holding it for a friend. I mean, I never heard of weed until a month ago." Yeah, for real. Like he's well aware of Diagolon and what these people are, what they represent. It's just it's it's kind of telling, right? It's kind of like giving the game away that he's saying like, what? What? What, Diagolon? It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? Okay. So yeah, content warning, sexual assault, at least threats made against Pierre Poilievre's wife. So I guess it is kind of politically interesting here because Pierre Poilievre is somebody who has kind of courted this alt-right movement, and now he's potentially finding that, hey, maybe these aren't the nicest people. And you know, it's all fun and games for Pierre Poilievre, I guess, when Chrystia Freeland is being harassed. But now that his wife there's threats being made against his wife. Yeah, pretty fucking weird. So interesting because it's potentially the base that Pierre Poilievre was appealing towards. We're maybe seeing that they're turning on him now, and you know, being their disgusting selves and not really actually caring about whatever populist ideas that Pierre Poilievre was virtue signaling towards. So let's see. The RCMP says it is reviewing a complaint from federal conservative leader Pierre Poilievre concerning a video in which two men joke about sexually assaulting his wife. Okay, fucking disgusting. In a social media posting on Monday, Mr. Poilievre called the pair dirtbags and indicated that his office had referred the matter to the Mounties. In a statement later in the day, the National Division of the RCMP said it was reviewing the information provided, but would not be in a position to elaborate on the situation unless criminal charges are laid. Mr. Poilievre was responding to comments made in a live stream that appeared on social media on the weekend. In it, Jeremy McKenzie, founder of the far-right group Diagolon, a former Canadian Forces soldier and an Afghan war veteran, said he wanted to sexually assault Aneta Poilievre. Another man laughs in response. So, yeah, if you're unaware, Diagolon is kind of, I think it's a lot of people refer to this organization as the kind of intelligence behind this far right movement that's happening in Canada. They're kind of like, they're good at like recruiting people. They, I think, take notice about who is rising and who is potentially like marketable within their movement. So they are kind of like the strategy behind the far right in Canada. So the fact that it's the people who are directly the founder of this organization is you know, of course the sexual assault threats are horrible, but it is like kind of ironic that, you know, these were the people that Pierre Poilievre was appealing towards and essentially utilizing as a weapon, as a political weapon. So Diagolon has been designated as a violent extremist group by the Integrated Terrorism Assessment Center. Okay, that's great. They've already been designated a violent extremist group, a federal organization that assesses terrorism threats to Canada and Canadian interests globally. The threat against Mr. Poilievre was the latest in a string of incidents that have raised questions about security of high-profile figures, including Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, who have had to deal with aggressive protests while in public. Two events featuring Prime Minister Justin Trudeau have been cancelled in recent months because of security concerns. So, you know, I think it's important to protest, but it should never be to the point where there are like threats of violence towards whoever you're protesting, right? Like of course this is coming from the far right, but I think it's like a good, you know, practice for anyone who is politically active. You should never have threats of violence against whoever or whatever you're protesting, because well, for one thing, it makes your protest like super delegitimate, you know? Like it nobody is going to like hear your message when your message is like violence, right? They're never going to be able to like see past that. So fuck that. It's easy enough to protest these people and these their policies without the threat of violence. In fact, it's a million times more effective. So that's why the far right is scary. It feels like, you know, as we saw throughout like the convoy and some of the shenanigans that they got into, like they're willing to use violence. Even on Saturday at the Peterborough Public Library, when there is this far right religious group protesting drag story time, you know, they weren't calling for violence. They were I think they were very organized or conscious of the fact that, hey, they can't call for violence against drag queens or trans people, but their entire reason for being there is essentially a violent one, in my opinion, especially when there's signs that say, you know, trans people are groomers. I think there's definitely a violent aspect that they're trying to incite. They never specifically call for violence, but that to me is violence. Pierre Poilievre definitely heard of Diagolon before a month ago, no doubt. Oh, absolutely. So here's what he says. This weekend, I became aware of disgusting comments made by Jeremy Mackenzie and another man, where they discussed sexually assaulting my wife. These men are dirtbags. Okay, Mr. Poilievre wrote in a tweet. So, I mean, calling them dirtbags, like, personally, I would have gone a bit harder than dirtbags, but I probably would have said something like absolute scum of the earth, or you know what? This is the moment where you use cussing. If you say something like, these men are fuckwads, you know, to use a local example, though that's the type of thing where everyone's gonna be like, all right, like, yeah, you know, he's right. Frankly, like most Canadians, until about a month ago, I had never heard of Diagolon and these losers. Okay, they are all odious. Oh, okay, this is what you're referring to, Garbage Face? Yeah. That, you know, Pierre Poilievre will have you believe he's like most Canadians, but he is definitely not. Yeah, just it's inconceivable that this would be his first time hearing of these people. You know, the average Canadian like myself or Garbage Face is like aware of this group existing because, you know, it's basically part of like the public consciousness that there's this alt-right group that is potentially violent, potentially like a terrorist threat. So for Pierre Poilievre, who's probably gone to, like, you know, they were talking about, oh, he's done 27 fucking rallies within the last 20 days or some shit like that. Where do you think the Diagolon people were? They were in the audience of those fucking rallies. And you think that his security team then didn't realize that Diagolon was in the crowd? I mean, there were Diagolon people arrested during the convoy stuff out in Alberta. It was all over the news. True. And I mean, he would have been very well aware of that. He's even, as we're about to find out, going to face criticism last month after the circulation of an image of him shaking hands with Mr. Mackenzie. So, like, he's literally, okay, Twitter, scary. Jerry Mackenzie, founder of Diagolon, just posted a picture to his Telegram of him shaking hands with Pierre Poilievre. It's unclear when the photo is from, but it looks like it's from one of Poilievre's campaign meet and greets. Now, okay, here's a video where Mackenzie and his fellow live streamers talk about so-called Freedom Convoy and its potential to bring down the government. They also talk about wanting to see gallows on Parliament Hill. We don't know anything about this image other than the fact that Mackenzie posted it. It could have been from before Global News had reported on Diagolon more extensively. It could also be photoshopped. A Photoshop, as Mackenzie's group loves that tool, though I don't see any signs of it. I don't think it's a Photoshop. But in Pierre Poilievre's like defense, you know, like if you're on the campaign trail and there's basically like a whole lineup of people there to shake your hand. So, it's not like everyone introduces like, "Hello, my name is Mr. Mackenzie of the founder of Diagolon, which is a far right terrorist group. Nice to meet you, Mr. Poilievre." It's also disingenuous. It sounds like a kid saying, "This isn't my weed. I was just holding it for a friend. I mean, I never heard of weed until a month ago." Yeah, for real. Like he's well aware of Diagolon and what these people are, what they represent. It's just it's it's kind of telling, right? It's kind of like giving the game away that he's saying like, "What? What? What Diagolon?" or whatever. Like it's like he could have just been like, "Yeah, we've known about this group for a long time, and our security team is has been monitoring the situation, and it's getting worse, and we're taking action." Like he could have just fucking said that. So why like so and everyone would have been like, "Yeah, okay." Yeah, everyone would have like blinked and like moved on with their life. But instead, he's denying that he's ever even heard of this group, right? So very, very strange. Giving the game away, as I say. On Monday, the Prime Minister said the conduct of the video was inappropriate. No one should ever be subject to threats of violence or the kind of hatred that we have seen increasingly in public discourse and in the public sphere, Mr. Trudeau said when asked about the matter at a news conference. It's important that we all stand up and condemn that, and we all look for ways to ensure that everyone feels safe in the country. So, of course, Trudeau, doing civility politics. I mean, what the fuck did you like? Of course, that's what Trudeau is gonna say. Really easy for him to just look like the reasonable adult in the room here when Pierre Poilievre, Jesus, I'm gonna say Pierre Trudeau for the rest of our days here. Pierre Poilievre, is not really so quick to like be like, "Oh my god, I'm so concerned about this issue of like politicians Christian Freeland was under attack. I'm like, this is not okay. Like it's definitely an easy kind of like subtle dunk for Trudeau. It's more of like a layup than a dunk. Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino said the language in the video was horrific and misogynistic, and all parliamentarians should be united in denouncing it. It shouldn't matter whether or not you're a member of the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party or any other party for that matter, he told journalists on Parliament Hill. I love how all he had to say was like Liberal, Conservative, NDP, or Green Party, but he literally just like couldn't, or any other party. It's like there's only like 3 other parties. I guess it really goes to show there is like we are still like such a dual party system in a way that there's like, it doesn't matter if you're red or blue. It's like, okay, but what about the orange and the green and the block? I guess the light blue, the baby blue block. The minister has said that the government is reviewing new safety protocols for cabinet ministers and other members of parliament in light of a pattern of threats. He has also expressed concerns about online harassment of journalists. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said no one should be threatened with sexual violence, whether journalists, politicians, or anyone's family. The rise of violent extremism in Canada should be a concern for all leaders. If there is political will, we can do something to stop it, he tweeted. Yeah, I genuinely believe like this just needs to stop, really. Like, there's no reason that these protests can't be peaceful. The situation is like getting more and more toxic. And what this will eventually mean is that we're not going to have like access to like journalists and politicians, right? If there's always like a threat of violence coming down on politicians, it's gonna be it's gonna worsen like the freedoms for everyone, for journalists and for like common folk to common folk. It makes me sound like I'm talking about hobbits. You know, we need more hobbits asking hard hitting questions to journalists. Okay. Um. um. Okay, absolutely revolting. Catherine McKenna, who is also targeted by misogynistic threats, saying here, absolutely revolting. Miss McKenna said the situation may be a reminder that politicians need to be careful about who they associate with. Wink, wink. Throwing a subtle dig here at Poilievre. She said the conservative leader in the past has not been forceful or quick to call out such harassment when it happens to others, such as I suppose herself. Miss McKenna said she was concerned about incidents like this deterring people from entering politics. And yeah, maybe that is something that we'll be kind of like asking Diane Tyrion later today is like, do you think like the harassment that you faced is something that is like going to deter people, specifically like women and people of color and queer folks and people living in poverty? Like, do you think that the harassment that we're facing is something that deters people from getting into politics? Okay, so actually let me add this to my list of questions here. Do you think the harassment, do you think people will be deterred from politics because of the current climate? Okay, whatever. I'll rephrase it IRL, or like in real time to make it better. In recent months, several Canadian politicians have faced increased levels of harassment. They're talking about, okay, Miss Freeland here. Mr. Poilievre spoke again about threats against his life. My wife has received so much horrific material directly to her social media account that we have had to hire a private security firm to protect our family against all of that abuse, he said during a campaign stop on Vancouver Island. So, yeah, this fucking sucks. You know, it's obviously I'm not like a fan of the Conservative Party, but it's really not about party lines in this case. It's about like protecting like democracy in general, and creating a climate where people feel comfortable. If it's gonna happen to Pierre Poilievre, who is like essentially the far right icon at this point, like it's gonna happen. So imagine what it's like for someone like Diane Tyrion, or you know, if the leader of the NDP was well, a person of color. What if they were a woman of color? You know, like um oh well, I suppose, you know, Pierre Poilievre's wife Aneta is a woman of color. So there you go. It fucking sucks out there. Um you know, and if you don't know, conservatives are the current champions of human rights and social justice, which is kind of really sad. Let me bring this up real quick. I think Tory, the lefty Canadian radical, was made a really great point about this. Let me find it real quick. They tweet so much. It's hard to know. Okay, yeah, here it is. Okay, so this is kind of like an interesting thing. You know, here is Melissa Lantsman, who is a conservative, fighting for freedom against Iranian dictatorship. In showing solidarity for the women of, Iran. In the wake of Masa Amini being killed by the morality police in Iran, and the general population in Iran taking it to the streets and protesting and drop kicking undercover cops and shit. So Tory here is saying that nobody in the NDP or Greens or Liberal Party is going to want to hear this. But showing up at rallies like this is the kind of thing MPs need to do to energize people and grow a base and win an election. And that is the absolute truth. You know, we can watch this video.
The regime killed a 22-year-old girl. It's going to be for a free Iran. That's when we're going to get here together again.
So this is not really what you would expect of a conservative, you know, fighting for the rights of Muslim people. It's weird to know where this intersection is coming from. But the Conservative Party is doing, unfortunately, I think, a good job of positioning themselves as the let's say the People's Party.
I have my colleagues with me all the way from Calgary. I've got Jazz, Dan, who's come here from Hamilton, and Anna, who's come here from Vaughan. And you have friends in the Conservative Party. You have friends who are going to stand up to this government and demand that the IRGC is a listed terrorist organization now. And we are going to continue. You want to talk about real women's rights?
So wait, what is the IRTC? Is a listed organization or a listed terrorist organization? Is that what she said?
Government and demand that the
IRGC? Oh, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Okay.
Is a listed terrorist organization now. And we are going to continue.
Okay. So just for some context here, you know, I guess she couldn't get through the solidarity with Iranian people without you know, calling some Muslim folks terrorists. But you know, it is possible that they are terrorists. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Army of Guardians of the Islamic Revolution, or Sepah, is a branch of the Iranian Armed Forces, founded after the Iranian Revolution on April 22nd, 1979, by order of the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Whereas the Iranian army defends Iranian borders and maintains internal order. According to the Iranian constitution, the Revolutionary Guard is intended to protect the country's Islamic Republic political systems. The Revolutionary Guard bases their role in protecting the Islamic system as well as preventing foreign interference and coups by the military or deviant movements. It's hard to really like dissect like what she's calling for here. Like, is she calling for like a coup of Iran? You know, I don't know. Maybe we can put this into a little more okay, context. Anyone? Al Jazeera? 1 month ago. Okay, I don't know. We'll just have to keep watching.
You want to talk about real women's rights? We're talking about real women's rights. You want to talk about rights of the LGBT community? We are going to talk about rights of the LGBT community. Those rights don't exist in the Islamic Republic.
Yes, conservatives. Traditionally the champion of women and LGBTQ people and Muslim folks.
They don't exist under the mullahs in power. We hear you. We stand with protesters, and I hope that this 22-year-old girl will say her name, Masami, that she wakes up the world and she wakes up this country to finally recognize the RGC, finally recognize victims of Flight 572, and make sure that we continue to stand against the money laundering, the shutting down of the internet, the shutting down of the voices in this country. We will hold the government to account. I need your help, and we will be with you every step of the way. Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Yes, donate to the conservatives so that we can support the women in Iran. So yeah, I mean, I agree here with Tori's analysis. It's why isn't Jagmeet Singh doing something like this? Why isn't someone from the NDP at this rally speaking? Um, what Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are doing right now, appealing to this like populism, casting a very like wide net, is potentially something that is like pretty dangerous for our country because you know a lot of Canadians will fall for this, unfortunately. And I think this is even something that is going to appeal to a lot of liberal voters, right? Or people who are purely like basing their vote around kind of these virtue signaling ideas. What is I guess it's also, I get a vibe here that like Canada is going to invade Iran and or at least start like some sort of proxy war there to remove their dictatorships. Is that what the people on in Iran want? And is that going to be good for the situation? I don't know. It seems like there is kind of like, I worry about the type of rhetoric and the lack of nuance that the Conservatives might approach a situation like this.